What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another DragonFlight video. That's right. We are using the name now. We'll be bouncing back and forth over the next, I don't know, year. But the point is, the announcement was made yesterday. If you're living under a rock, I did do a video yesterday about DragonFlight. We watched the whole thing together on the live stream as well on Twitch. You can go check out that VOD if you want to as well. Twitch will be linked down below. I did talk about some of the features that were there yesterday, of course, and we kind of just touched on them briefly, but there has been a whole bunch of interviews with like Ian Hazelnuttygames and like a bunch of other people since the launch happened yesterday at like noon. I think the whole afternoon, evening, they did a bunch of interviews, but I was busy, so I couldn't get to them. So I've checked out one particular interview that Ian did with Hazelnuttygames. And I'm going to link her channel down below. She's a much, much bigger YouTuber than me, and she's been in the WoW community forever. And she did an awesome interview with Ian talking about all the features that are coming in the new expansion. And so there's some really, really important details there that I think that we need to make sure that we touch on. So let me just get my notes going on over here. We're going to be scrolling through this page once again. I went through this page already, so it's not going to be that. But I'm going to bring up just a couple of the points that were made, and we're going to talk about them here. So grab your coffee, and let's just jump right into it. There's about 5 different things that I want to talk about. So there's some details here for DragonFlight. Number 1, Hazel talked with Ian about borrowed power, and this is something that we're all like concerned about. This is something that we're all kind of worried about for sure, is that there's, in the last even 3 expansions, Legion, BFA, and now Shadowlands have all had borrowed power, right? Legion had the artifact weapons and double legendaries. BFA had all the Azerite power and legendaries as well. Did they? I can't remember. There weren't legendaries. Oh no, there was like the essence system. So many borrowed powers in BFA. Now in Shadowlands we have, covenants, soulbinds, the conduits that go along with them, double legendaries, and tier sets. It's like you don't even have a character anymore, right? And so people have been complaining about this for a while. One of the biggest things that Blizzard has done that Ian's talked about explicitly is that they are doing away with a lot of the borrowed power in the DragonFlight expansion. They are moving forward, and instead they are replacing it with things like this talent tree, right? So this is one of the biggest things they've talked about. So Ian said they're moving away from borrowed power because of player feedback and because of their own realization that they're kind of like digging themselves into a hole, and then they have now they have a huge hole and they have to fill it in again when the next expansion comes, and then they dig a new hole in the next expansion, and we all get used to those features, and then they have to fill the hole in at the end of the expansion and start again. They don't want to keep doing that. So this never used to be a problem for them. And Ian had a good point about this, that this wasn't really an issue until like Mists of Pandaria, right? Because if you look back at the initial like classic talent tree, right? This was the talent tree from classic, and there were 51 points. You could put 30 in here, and then you spilled some over into the other specs, right? And that's what you would kind of do. And then like as the years went on, they added they added more to the game, because this was the base thing that we started with. And then by the time you get to like Cataclysm, the talent tree now looks like this, and it has a bunch of different. It's similar, but there's more. There's more, right? And there's new abilities that are in here. They're adding Tree of Life. Wild Growth is in there. That didn't used to be there for the Restoration one. They're adding like a whole bunch of interesting abilities and stuff. And then by the time you get to Mists of Pandaria, they've shifted to the talent rows that we have in Shadowlands now, right? And they just did away with this old system here altogether. And Ian talked a lot about sort of the creep that happens, right? You're adding another row of stuff, adding more stuff, and then like once they got to Mists, it was like there was 7 talent rows, and then like Legion I think was 8, and then by the time we get to the game now, I think we were back down to 7 because they did the number crunch. They brought everything back down, all the numbers came back down. So the point is simply to say that there's actually this system plus the system that we have now is kind of what they're combining into this system here. They're trying to say, listen, we're going to revamp this entire talent system so that it's no longer just going to be like we're not going all the way back to classic, but we're not sticking with the system that we have now, because the classic system was pretty good in that it had like a lot of diversity. I think that you could go and switch into other trees, but it didn't have the same kind of like power that the new talent trees have. Like the amount of abilities and just the power that is cropped up in the talent trees that we have now is pretty insane, right? Like things like, think about enhancement chum and things like hot hand. You have hot hand as just a one talent. That's like an entire build, just one talent basically. So now what they're doing is they're saying, listen, we're not going to invest in borrowed power in Dragonflight. We are not doing that. Instead, we're going to invest in the baseline power of what we have going forward, and are going to revamp it so that it's really, really exciting. And I think that just as like a cursory look at this talent tree, you might not think it's anything special, but it really is, I think. And I think it's going to be incredibly powerful. So they've kind of reimagined the talent system here, and they are going to continue building. Ian said explicitly that they're going to continue building on this talent tree in the future. It's going to get better. They're going to add more rows, or they're going to add more abilities to it. Maybe they'll add more stuff on the outside. He didn't say explicitly what they're going to add, but he did say there will be more rows and talents in the future. So that's something that we have to look forward to. But even just the choice here right away, I mean, you think about the talent system we have now, there's choices. There's all these hexagonal shapes. I talked about this yesterday, but these hexagonal shapes here are all choices, right? So you have like Flourish, Convoke. This Convoke one has either Convoke or Tree of Life. You have to pick which one you want, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. And then there's 7, 8, 9 choices. On top of the 9 like fundamental choices you're going to have to make in between these two trees, you have just a whole bunch of abilities that you get pick and choose from, and all these passives. And so I do think that this is the right path that they're going to go down, and this is a very powerful, powerful system. Ian talked about how this is not only going to be the talent system that they want to go with the game, but it's going to affect like other systems that they would have had in the game, and I'm going to talk about that later as well. I'll get back to that in a minute. But just know that there will be more rows, there will be more talents. They have been listening to player feedback about what talent options that people want. And when this gets into our hands in the beta, they're going to be listening to players. And like, do we want Convoke and Tree of Life here? Yes, we want both of those. Do we want maybe a different Covenant ability that was like a Druid one, like Adaptive Swarm or something? Maybe we want to bring that in instead. And they are not opposed. He said that it is just open to anything, and they are going to listen to player feedback and hear what the community has to say about what talents we might want to bring forward with us from Shadowlands, from BFA. What do we want to bring forward into the next expansion? And they might add it to this tree. So very exciting, very positive stuff with this talent tree. Very exciting to talk about borrowed power going away. It's going away in this expansion. Cannot be more excited about that. Ian did say that the longevity of this talent tree, also that it's going to last, he says, for at least 2 to 3 expansions. In his mind, again, he's just ballparking it, but he says it's going to be here for at least 2 to 3 expansions, and then they'll think about what to do with it, you know, as they get closer to that date, like 7, 8 years down the road when it becomes a problem, right? He also said that this is not the end of borrowed power. They are still going to have, you know, gear, obviously, that is going to be in the game that is essentially borrowed power, right? The gear that you get is borrowed power, but there's also going to be tier sets later, and there will be tier sets in this expansion. He said that explicitly, that they're going to do tier sets. They're just not going to do like 500 other systems. It looks like they're really settled on this talent system here, plus tier sets, and then it doesn't sound like they want to do much else. That might just be what we're getting, which would be like everything that we asked for, right? This is what everybody asked for, was to have this combination of stuff. So very, very exciting stuff when it comes to borrowed power and talents in Shadowlands. Now, let's move forward. Going to talk about renown. Now, a big thing in Shadowlands was, of course, the covenants, and of course, collecting renown for your covenant. And that actually had player power tied to it, right? If you remember that, like, your soul binds and your conduits, they're all tied. It's all player power. Like at this point in the expansion in Shadowlands now, it doesn't matter because we're all maxed out on renown. But when you weren't maxed out on renown, it affected your power. So what he's saying is that there's going to be reputation for the dragonflights in 10.0, but there will be there will be reputation to earn with them. But you're not going to have to like fill a bar of anima power for the Covenant, and there will essentially be no player power tied to the dragonflights. I keep whacking my mic. What that means is there will be some gear that I think he said you can get from like the different quests that you're doing in the zones, but that gear is not going to like outscale the gear that you're probably going to find in like a flat mythic early on or mythic plus or rating. That gear will always be better, but there will be gear and then cosmetics to find while you're doing the stories of the Dragonflights, while you're getting reputation. But there will not be like a Covenant ability, like a Dragonflight ability that you're going to get, and then like a Soulbind tree that you're going to have to work through. All of that is gone. That is all borrowed power, and it's all going to be gone. It's just that you're going to get just sort of a regular questing is what you're going to end up going through. So the rewards will just essentially be cosmetic. So yeah, that's really good. That has to do with sort of reputation and renown in Dragonflight. Now, professions in Dragonflight. This is something else that's really, really cool. And this was a really amazing, actually, piece that they talked about. And there were more details that I didn't even know about until I watched the Hazelnut interview. So let's get into this. This is really awesome. So first and foremost, they are not going to repeat the exact same system that they did in Shadowlands. In Shadowlands, you basically had to invest like $1 million up front into the legendary crafting system that they employed, right? Where you could make the baseline legendary items. You had to invest a ton of money up front, and then you were able to learn like the 75th version of the baseline that you could craft. And then you could start crafting it for people, and then they would all buy it, and then you would slowly like recoup the cost of what you had to invest to make that work over time. They're not going to repeat that pattern for professions. Professions, they are going to be completely different in this game. They're looking at obviously focusing on specializations. I talked about this yesterday. What I didn't realize yesterday, what Ian wasn't able to say yesterday, is that there will be talent trees for professions. Now, we have no picture of this. I just have this little UI for the work orders that they've talked about, but there will, in fact, be like blacksmithing talent tree. There'll be a leatherworking talent tree. There'll be a herbalism talent tree, I think. I mean, I don't know if they just have the talent trees based on like the production professions. I suspect it just has to do with the production professions, but it could be the gathering ones as well. That's, you know, we just don't know, obviously, but there will be a talent tree, an actual talent tree for professions. So Ian also said that there will be like talent trees that help you to specialize in what you want to do. And he was a little vague on this, but from what I gathered, it's that let's say you're a blacksmith to start. And then in your talent tree, you specialize into becoming an armor smith. You could be a weaponsmith, and you're going to go over here and be an armor smith instead. So now you're an armor smith, and then you can further specialize and say, I'm just going to be a plate armor smith. I'm just going to go down over to here and just be like a plate armor smith. I could have been like a male armor smith, or a weapon. Obviously, a weaponsmith would be different, but I'm gonna go over here and become a plate specialist. On top of that, I'm gonna specialize even further, and I'm gonna make helms. I'm gonna spend my talent points, my specialization points, into being able to make helms. So now you're like the de facto super specialized plate helm crafter, and on your server, you can like people who put up work orders for like a high level, very, very high statted or high quality plate helm, they can come to you now and you can fulfill that work order. Only you can do it because you've put the time and the effort and the specialization in to make that work. So that's the direction that they're going with all of the professions. And like it seems like the production professions are going to be such an absolute blast in this game. Like the amount of specializations in this talent tree thing, like there's just so much going on there that we don't even know about yet, and I'm sure we'll get details on it in the weeks to come. But very, very, very cool. I feel like this is such a nod to the community to say, listen, we hear you. Professions aren't the most exciting thing ever, and we're going to try and make it better for you. So love this. Absolutely love this. Cannot wait to jump in and try to take a look at sort of what this has to offer. I think the big idea with crafting for them is that if you spend enough time doing work orders, you're going to gain that reputation on your server, and then everybody will know that, hey, you got to go to Zuko if you want to get like the mail thing. He'll give you like a little bit of a discount maybe, or I don't know what it would be, but that's the idea. And so Ian also said that the crafting in Dragonflight, they want it to be relevant into the end game. So he literally said that you will have the option for making like mythic raid level gear. That's what he said. So what he did say is he didn't say the exact details on this, but he did sort of allude to the fact that it's going to be quite difficult, I think, to make that kind of gear. Like, it's going to be hard. You're going to need probably lots of mats. What he did say, he was very explicit also about saying they are not going to create a world where you can just walk into the auction house and with 1,000,000 gold and buy a full set of Mythic Raid gear. That is not going to happen. Do not worry about that. But there will be essentially this ability for crafters to make high-level crafted gear that will scale into the endpoint of the expansion, which is really, really awesome. Because one problem that I've always had with crafting is, like, I invest my time into it early and maybe make some money or maybe make a little bit of gear, and then my gear, like, very quickly gets out-scaled by the Mythic Plus that I'm doing. And then I'm like, why did I spend all that time investing into crafting in the first place? So I am very excited about this. It's going to make me get into crafting as a more kind of casual crafter. I'm definitely going to go hardcore on it, I think, in this expansion because of the fact that it's going to scale into the later portions of the game now, being able to make it very, very high level. So that's awesome. Yeah, it's going to make crafting incredibly relevant for the entire expansion, which is amazing. So that's professions in DragonFlight. Let's go to legendaries in DragonFlight. They talked about this really quickly. So, of course, we know that in Shadowlands, this is kind of what your legendary page looks like right now, right? We're looking at, like, you just have so many legendaries to choose from. Doomwinds, Legacy, Witch Doctor, Primal Lava, Ancestral Reminders, Nobody Used, Deep Tremor, Deeply Rooted, Chains of Devastation. There's like 15 more below this. There's like 30 legendaries or something. It's insane, right? So Shadowlands legendaries, where there's like a ton of them, they are doing away with that in DragonFlight. There is no longer going to be a ton of legendaries. In fact, there aren't, at this point, Ian said that there will not be legendaries in this form. He did say that there will be legendaries in the form of like items, like a Sylvanas bow or something like that, where there's an item that drops and it's just so epic that they're going to make it legendary. But in terms of legendary powers, they are not doing it in DragonFlight as of right now. I mean, he did seem pretty adamant that they're not going to be doing it, and the reason that that's the case is because of this system here. Instead, they're investing their time and effort into this talent tree system here, and you can see the effects of that. Let me move this over a little bit right so you can see it. Sorry about that, guys. Ooh. I'm going to move this over. Look at this here. Look at this side of the druid tree. This icon right here is literally a druid legendary icon in our game right now. It's the Swiftmen one, and you can see that it's in the Swiftmen row, right? It's the one that says instead of Swiftmen consuming a hot, it will extend all the hots on the target. And like, it makes sense that this is where it is in this tree because Flourish is right below it. And Flourish is, of course, the AoE where it extends all of your hots on all raid members. So like, thematically, it makes sense that I don't know what this icon is, but I'm going to take an educated guess here and say that this is the legendary effect that we have right now in Shadowlands. That's what I believe this is. Also, this icon right here is the Circle of Life and Death icon for druids. It's another legendary that says all of your damage over time is increased by 25%. All your healing over time is increased by 15%. So these are literally two legendary icons. I actually firmly believe right now that this is a legendary effect from in the game right now that will be in DragonFlight, and they've just baked it into the talent tree. Now, like, maybe it has a slightly reduced effectiveness from, like, the legendary effect that we have right now, because maybe it's overpowered, but maybe not. What Ian really, the sense that I got from Ian is that they're not going to do legendaries in DragonFlight, and they're going to invest all of that effort instead into this talent tree right here. So that's amazing because, again, it's exactly what we wanted. We all wanted this talent system to be better. I want my base class to be powerful. I want to like have all these abilities on my own. I don't want to have to borrow them from somewhere else and then to lose them later. So like Blizzard has really, really listened, guys, to like our feedback and what people want to hear going forward. So like I'm so excited with this. No legendaries in DragonFlight, but I believe that they will be baked into the talent tree, as I've seen some evidence of it down here. And that just gets me really excited because I think that means that our characters are just getting so powerful in DragonFlight and into the future moving on because this talent tree is sticking around for several expansions, okay? Also, there will be tier sets. I talked about that earlier, but there's also going to be tier sets sort of talking in the same vein as the legendary conversation, right? So very, very awesome. Good to hear from Ian. This interview was honestly so encouraging. If you haven't watched the Hazelnutty interview, again, it'll be linked below. Go watch it. Last thing I'm going to touch on is Mythic Plus. So Mythic Plus, of course, Ian just mentioned it a little bit. We kind of know this anyway, but all of the time walking stuff happening in like Shadowlands right now. So the Legion time walking, and then in the new season that's going to be coming up, where they're going to be pulling dungeons from Warlords of Draenor and Legion and BFA. They're going to continue that trend into Dragonflight. So what he said was they're going to launch Dragonflight with 8 new dungeons. There will be 8 new Dragonflight dungeons that you can do on normal and heroic and flat mythic difficulty. When season 1 of Mythic Plus comes around, they're going to cut that in half, and they're going to take 4 of the Dragonflight dungeons and 4 dungeons from past expansions, not Shadowlands, but like BFA, Legion, WoD, maybe even further back. And they're going to put those into the pool. So then in the first season of Mythic Plus, you will have 4 Dragonflight dungeons and 4 other dungeons for a total of 8. And you'll just run those for an entire season. Then in season 2 of Dragonflight, they're going to take the other 4 Dragonflight dungeons that they didn't use in season 1, and they're going to put those in, and then they're going to add 4 entirely new dungeons from whatever expansions they want to, a whole new, so that it's a new experience. Ian talked a lot about, like, even though there are Mythic Plus affixes and, you know, like Fortified and Tyrannical, which really changes the way that you're going to do the dungeon every single week, and then as you do dungeons, like, you learn how to do them better and you come up with new strategies. Like, Mythic Plus is pretty deep, but even with that, Ian said that, like, as you do Mythic Plus over a season, it gets a little bit tedious, right? Where you're like, I'm running Plaguefall for the 300th time. I'm a little bit bored of this dungeon. So what they're doing is they're going to mix it up. And they're saying, listen, we're going to give you, when season 1 rolls around, you get 4 Dragonflight dungeons and 4 of something else. Then season 2, you get 4 different Dragonflight dungeons and 4 of something else. It's going to keep the Mythic Plus seasons incredibly fresh. They're going to be fresh. They're going to be fun. There's going to be lots of learning to do. And that's really exciting. I think that this is like a fantastic direction for them to go in the game. I do wish that they would actually just, one of my caveats for Mythic Plus, I believe, is that I wish that they would just give us the dungeons, and then each week you block off certain parts of the dungeons, which forces the players to go a different route. I would love that. I think that that's a neat idea, because the dungeons are usually pretty wide open. There's some that aren't. Like Theater of Pain, I guess, is not really wide open, but there's a lot of dungeons, like Plaguefall is a great example, or Halls of Atonement, or Necrotic Wake. You know, they're pretty wide open dungeons, and there's different trash. Actually, I guess Necrotic Wake is pretty linear, but my point here is to say that, like, I feel like that's a direction they could also go with the dungeons. But for now, what they are going to do is 4 dungeons in season 1, 4 random ones from the past. Then the next season is the 4 other dungeons from Dragonflight, and then 4 random ones from the past. There you go. That's going to be Mythic Plus. So very excited about all that stuff. And that's the recap video, guys. That's sort of the details that we didn't get to yesterday from all the Dragonflight announcements. So very, very exciting stuff. I think that this talent system in particular is like, oh my God, it's going to be so good to get our hands on this. Like, I think that there's powerful talents in here. There's going to be powerful builds, these hexagons having different choices for you. This is essentially the entire talent system that we have now is wrapped up right here, because you're going to get choices that you need to pick through. And then on top of that, it looks like they have legendary effects that they're baking in to the specs, because they're not going to have legendaries that we have to go chase down in the game at all. So excited about all the news here. The reputation stuff seems good. We're not going to have to fill an anima bar every week. There's really going to be no borrowed power from what we can tell. The profession system is going to have its own talent tree. Just so many exciting things, guys. So let me know in the comments down below what you think is exciting. What are you most excited about for this new Dragonflight expansion reveal? What do you think? Like, what is going to be the best feature, do you think? What are you excited about? Are you excited about professions? Do you like the talents? Are you excited about the new class and race combination? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to drop a like, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, go down and hit that red button. I would also really appreciate it. And until the next one, guys, we'll see you later.